And now it's time to enter the lair, and we're heading back in time to speak to one of the most influential players in Perth Lynx history. She is part of an elite group of women to have won a WNBL championship for the club, but she stands alone as the only grand final MVP in Perth Lynx history. Tanya Fisher, welcome to the Dribble podcast.
Thank you, Craig. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start on that historic night in 1992. It's so long ago that Paul Keating was Prime Minister. Perth Wildcats have won only 2 titles. Shane's Warren Test career had produced 4 for 386. I was in year 11 and our producer wasn't born. So if we go back there, it was the Waste Breakers at the time, you were known as. You beat Dandenong 58-54. What are your standout memories of the game?
Well, my standout memories were, I can remember turning to Natasha when the final buzzer blew and looking at her and just going, thank God, because it had been such a hard year and such a transformative year for us as a team. I mean, we'd started, really getting some traction when Timsy came over, but that year was the first year that we were under the care and direction solely with Waste and driven by Tom Ma. We'd been through an extensive fitness regime to bring us up to that point. We'd endured, the start of the season. Then we had a month break because they had the Barcelona Olympics in the middle of it, which Timsy and Robin were involved with. So we had to survive keeping up a training regime over the month, a bit similar to what the girls are facing these days as well with the way that the schedule is. And then finally playing the grand final in October. So it was a really long season when you look at the fact that pre-season started in January.
You mentioned names like Timsy, Robin, Tom Ma, like Michelle Timms, Robin Ma, Tully Bevilacqua was in that group as well, and Tom Ma. They're iconic names in Australian basketball, and you were quite young at the time. What was it like to be hanging around those sorts of people as a young person?
I don't think at the time when you're in it, you appreciate the significance of the moment. I mean, Robin, playing alongside Robin Ma, let me just tell you, I still think to this day, if I had to pick the number one person on my team, it would be her, because the woman just never makes an error. She's just where she needs to be all the time, and she was still outrunning most of us on beach runs when she was 6 months pregnant after we took out the title as well. She is and will always be in my mind as being one of the most intimidating players I've ever come across in my life. Timsy we've been playing with for 2 years by then, so we were well accustomed to her quirky sense of humour. But again, she's just unbelievably inspirational. Tom Ma was by far and away the best coach I've ever had, ever. Like, he's a teacher by training, and it comes out in everything that he does. He's prepared, he plans, he structures, and he very rarely actually yells. He doesn't have to. He just gets his point across in other ways. And Tully Bevilacqua, believe it or not, was just the little junior hanging around the end of the bench at that stage, sort of looking on with wide eyes, and we had no concept of what she was going to become either. So yeah, it was a quite an inspirational group when I look back, and I'm honoured to have been able to play for and with the people that were there.
So how old were you at the time? Because you'd been around for a few years at that point. What age were you in when you won that title?
Do I have to give that away?
It's hard because it makes me realise how old you are. I'm not trying to give the listeners a concept of where you sort of sat in that group of big names.
I was in my very early 20s.
That was what I thought you were going to say, very early 20s. So when you look at information about the game back then is quite hard to find because there aren't a lot of records, unfortunately. But what I've been able to find in our library is you scored 15 points, 11 of them came in the first half, and a match report described you as having a swag of rebounds. Can you talk about your game specifically?
I think that, look, they had a hard time. We had a really, you look at the first 5 that we had an extremely skilled group. Every single person that was on the floor in that first 5 particularly, and that flooded over into the bench as well. But the first 5, any single one of us could have actually scored easily the 15 points and customarily did so. But I think it was just that I took advantage of the fact that you can't shut all 5 of us down at the same time. So as much as you'd love to say, I was a champion, it was very much in my mind. I had no concept of what I'd scored until the end of the game was coming, because it was all about a team effort and a team way of trying to get the ball in the hole to win it, So it was only a 4-point margin in the end. No one thought we could do it. We'd already annoyed the East Coast by securing the grand final on our home court, so we're already fighting against that. So I remember the game. It was tough. It was unbelievable, and I'd see my own performance only as a reflection of what that group was then. It was just an amazing group.
It's so hard to win at any level of sport, and you went so close again a few years later. You had a 1-point loss in another grand final, got down to a final 3. You then lost another grand final to a young AIS team that included Lauren Jackson and half the Opals team for the future. Like, how do you reflect on winning one and then being so close to others? Like, a lot of people say that they only look at the losses and they're the ones that they wake up remembering every single day. Do you celebrate all the time that you won one, or do you look back and in frustration you didn't win more, like a lot of professional athletes do?
Oh, God, that's a tough question. You always remember the losses hurt the most, but they're meant to hurt the most because the wins are so much fewer. You know, like they're the ones that you're lucky if you get a handful of them in your lifetime, because there's only one going at the end of every season. You know, so the losses sting though. The 1 point loss to the next year after that was a killer. And that went right down to the line, like right down to the last shot. And you know, I wasn't involved in the grand final against the AIS. I'd sort of stepped back and came back in later after that. But I mean, that team, Lauren Jackson, I can remember playing against her when she was 14. She was already formidable, you know. So when you look back and reflect what the actual WA team was doing at that point in time, they stepped well out and above and beyond. But, the losses hurt, but the win was, I have no words.
and MVP, weren't you here? Do people raise it with you much, or as being the MVP, or do they talk to you more about being the championship winner when people talk about your success within basketball circles?
Well, as you say, there's not a lot of information out there, so it was only the people that were there that understood what that was, you know, what that was like that night, that sort of remember, you know, the point status at the end of the game. But the 1992 grand final comes up all the time because, of course, it's the only one we've secured so far. I'm hoping that we're going to come close to doing it this year, but so far it's the only one. So that's what people tend to remember more. It's a shame because I look back on that, and because we didn't have social media and we just had less of a representation, you know, less mediums to be able to present the girls, that a lot of the history for key players in that time has kind of been lost and is not actually brought up as much as it should be. So I think it's more the win and you know, like I don't like to point out my performance, like I said, like I think it was part of the team side of things, but it's definitely the win that sticks in people's mind because we just haven't had enough of them.
we haven't had enough, as you say, and we had the 2015-16 team, which went close. You know, we got to a grand final and lost. The 2017-18 team, which was ripped off from even getting to a grand final. We've seen it in the AFL recent years. Sydney break a drought, then Geelong break a drought, then the Bulldogs, Richmond, Melbourne, and how emotional it was, not only for the players, the fans, but the ex-players as well. Do you feel like the players of the past are hanging out for someone else to win a championship for this club?
Oh, it's long overdue, like seriously. And it's, look, you know, like it's a little bit of a hard call. We really want them to win again. We really want there to be a history behind that, because I think that actually in a way enhances what we did back in 92, you know, and it gives us a chance to talk about the history again as well, and sort of, you know, and to make sure that credit is given where credit was due. So we're all hanging out. And I think we're almost getting to the point where we're too scared to hope, because we've come close so many times and we just haven't picked and got that gold medal yet.
So what's the bond like between yourself and that group, that 92 group? How strong has the bond been forged by that championship?
Look, it's still there today. You know, it's still there in the respect and the connection that we have with Timsy and Robin. The hardest part about that bond is that it was such a successful group that they ended up spread out all over Australia. So it's, you know, but thank God for social media and, you know, and Facebook and ways to keep in touch now. So we're all parts of the same group and all parts of the same conversation. Tanya was based up in Port Hedland for years in her job up there, and so I got to visit her when I was up there working, which I can consider myself extremely blessed to be able to do so, to be able to catch up with her about 3 or 4 times a year, which is fantastic. So the bond is always there, and it transcends like even a word like friendship, because only the people that were in it can understand what the cost was to actually bring that home. And
you had a COVID-safe number of people to a house on the weekend to watch the Lynx play their first game back in Perth for a while. How many of those that number of COVID-safe people were from that group, and how many of them were from other groups you've played with and against over the years?
Yeah, there was no one from that group. The group that I had was got sort of people that were involved to get us to the point where we were competing in WNBL, and people that sort of came after that. And then after that it's the junior contingent, because of course I've made sure that my girls understand the history and the importance and the relevance of the people that came before them, so that they get to enjoy the benefits of what they did on the back of what they did. So we all stayed at home, did the COVID safe thing to be able to watch the game. So both both on Saturday and then last night again as well. So yeah. But because there's still not enough of us in one place. Timsy and Michelle are over in Timsy and Robin are over in Victoria. Tasha's still based up in Port Hedland. Lisa McLean's the only one here in Perth with myself, and everyone else is spread out all over the globe. Tully, of course, is back in America. Yeah, it's a widely flung group.
So let's go back to that 87 team you mentioned. So that's the Waste Rockets, they were called at the time, and you won the national title, which led to being added to the WNBL. You're the only person who was part of that team and part of the grand final team. What was that 87 experience?
Because we wanted to go into the WNBL, we were told by our East Coast counterparts that in order to qualify, we had to actually take out a Conference League title to do so. We didn't have the budget to be able to go over there and to be able to compete on a weekly basis. So we actually had to go on a road trip that consisted of 17 games in 21 days in every state of Australia. And we figured out that in order for us to be able to qualify to get through to the finals, we would have to win a minimum of 9, and we ended up taking out 10. And then we had to go back and compete against in Adelaide in the finals and grand finals. And we took out the championship, the Conference League championship, when no one said that we could. So it was the stuff that you should really write movies about, that road trip. It required incredible personal sacrifice for women to be able to pack up their lives and to go on the road for 21 days. When you're not getting paid for it. And the fact that we actually managed to take out the entire title was just something they never believed that we could do. So, yeah, it was fantastic.
It's an insane schedule. That's ridiculous.
Yes, it really was. Yeah.
So when you look at their schedule, this current team at the moment, like they were 8 games in 24 days, I think it was, and then it's going to be another 8 games in 26 they're working through at the moment. Does there feel like you get some similarities to the history of the club that maybe with finals thrown in, they're going to have to win a certain number of games in, it'll be 12 or 13 games they'll play in 40 days or so. It is leaning towards the same sort of trend, isn't it?
It is. And look, I always wish that, because I would have liked to have heard from players that came before me when I was playing too, because you do get the benefit of their wisdom, and that's why having Robin was so significant for us. But when I hear about their schedule, it doesn't really matter what the schedule is. Yeah, you can fight for a better one, you can fight for a fairer deal, you can fight for better terms, but the bottom line is, it is what it is, and once it's set in stone and that's what it's going to be, then you just have to suck it up and go at it hard, and you just can't accept any excuses as being a reason for losses or for not getting through. It's just what you have to do, So we've done it before, we'll do it again.
Can they win it? Do they have the talent? Do they have the game plan? Do they have teamsmanship that you need? All of the things that are required to win a championship other than talent. Do you think they've got it?
I do. I think the thing that they're struggling with at the moment is a common WA problem for women's basketball. We lack the layers where we can actually get adequate game practice of the level that we need when we're back here in WA. That's an issue for us. So if you look at the team that played on Saturday night after they'd had their break versus a team that played Monday night, it was like polar opposites. And although Scherf came back in on the Monday night, just the way they played, like one player can't make that level of difference. As dominant as she is, nothing away from Scherf. The team that fronted up to play Adelaide last night was a completely different team than the one that stepped onto the court on Saturday. So they just need to hold on to that, because that's grand final winning stuff right there.
How do you rate Jackie Young at the moment as a basketballer? She's in some pretty damn good form.
Oh, she's hit form at the right end of the season, and that's when it counts. And she was just she was amazing, absolutely amazing. They just really, really struggled to put a lid on anything she was doing last night, and that in turn frees up Sammy a lot more. And when they've got to actually put a lot of defensive intensity into Jackie, then Sammy gets a little bit more of a rein, and they've got Mabry coming back in as well. So they've got another chief scorer coming in. So it's going to be, the more they have coming back, and when they come back full contingent, the harder they're going to be to stop. So it was quite inspirational.
Well, speaking of Young, it's probably not a surprise to see she'll appear in our Dribble podcast MVP votes for this week. So for the game against the Sydney Uni Flames, which wasn't great, it's fair to say, it was hard to find 3, but we went 1 vote to Darcy Garvin for 10 rebounds, 2 blocks and 3 steals, 2 votes Sammy Whitcomb, 14 points, 5 assists and 6 steals, and 3 votes to Jackie Young, 28 points, 6 rebounds and 4 steals. And then in the Adelaide game, where everyone played well, it was quite amazing. 1 vote to Alex Gibertoni, 13 points, including 3 3-pointers and 7 assists. 2 votes Sammy Whitcomb for 22 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists and 4 steals. And 3 votes to Jackie Young, who did everything, 30 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists and 5 steals. Marina Mabry still leads on 15, but Young is now on 14 votes, overtaking Lauren Scherf on 13. Now, we've talked a lot about 92. let's talk about more recent times. You're a former East Perth Eagles coach in the SBL. What are your favourite memories as coach?
Oh, wow. Favourite memories as coach, probably the games that we did actually manage to see come up and win. Like we took out Willerton in my second year, and the games that we came close, like it was a development phase when I was coaching them, and I took the hits on the chin because the club and myself sat down and worked out what we had to do to put us in a better position, like it was a 5-year plan. So the ones that stand out in my mind are the ones where that potential started shining through and other people got to see what we were doing, and that certainly held true for this year when they went right through to, got knocked out just for the preliminary final. So they're the things that you live for as a coach. I think it's for me, it's not just the wins. For me, it's actually seeing the fruit of labours, to see people come through, to see what you're doing actually start to bloom and hit fruition. That's what I'll remember from it. Yeah.
Would you get back into it, do you think? Is it something that you got a passion for, or watching your daughters play, is that more important to you at the moment?
Well, I think that's got to take precedence for a little bit. Like, it's for me to take a step back and just be able to be their support system, because it hasn't always been possible to do everything. And from a personal level, I've got masters coming up this year for basketball over here in Perth that's being played in April, and training for swimming. So I'm prioritising myself as an athlete at the moment over coaching. It's probably something I'll go back into later, but I like to work more in the developmental phase more so than the elite level. I love watching the elite level, and I certainly understand the mindset of it. But I think that the bit that's missing over here in WA is that development piece. I think that we've got a lot of gaps in that, and that translates out to our difficulties from a female perspective when we compete at nationals and the juniors and things like that. So I'd like to be able to contribute to that in the future, and to be able to provide a solution for that, or to be able to contribute in some way to other people providing a solution. But we'll just leave it open and see what happens.
I imagine you've contributed fairly heavily to Erin and Bree's basketball journeys. Was Erin who went to the US for 3 years, was it? Am I right? It was 3, or was it 4? Yep, 3 years. And
they're 3 years.
They're both at East Perth now. Like, where do you see their careers taking them?
Well, I've got 2 very, very diverse daughters. One's more of an academic and one's more of an athlete. Erin lives, breathes and dies for basketball. And Bree loves playing it, is an outstanding athlete, but she's on her 5th year of law and criminology. So she's got a fairly hefty commitment career-wise coming up for her at the end of this year. So it's up to them, but I always encourage them to stay competitive, because you never know. Like, you only have to look at Emma Gandini coming in this year, and the impact that she's had. Like, she's been amazing when she gets on the court, given that she's had no exposure to WNBL, and yet every time she's come on the floor, she's hit the stat sheet in significant ways, for her very limited time out there. So you just never know at what stage of your life that the opportunity comes up and you're in the right place and headspace to be able to take that on. So I encourage my daughters to look at it the same way. So Erin's still keen to make her mark in NBL 1, but she's coming back from a knee injury at the moment. And Bree, I think, is happy to compete in that, but I don't think she's looking at moving forward on from that. But who knows when that'll change? So that's on them. That's their journey and their journey to define.
You mentioned your swimming before. Training to swim to Roto, like, where does the motivation come from? Like, it's amazing. I reckon athletes never stop being athletes in their own head, but it's hard to do it as you get 30 years beyond the 1992 championship. So where did the motivation to try to swim to Rottnest come from?
Well, I've always liked swimming. I'm a strong swimmer, but I'm not what I'd say the fastest swimmer, but I'm certainly strong. So I would never compete in swimming in a sprint. You wouldn't believe how fast women can be at an older age group. Like, it's quite incredible how long they can keep that competitive urge to go. But swimming to Rottnest is always something I want to do, because I enjoy the process so much, and when I'm undergoing any kind of physical activity, and my ankles won't let me run too much these days. They're still complaining about the career that I had in basketball. So swimming's a really good compromise for me. It's something that I can keep moving forward and keep challenging myself and keep pushing myself physically without it having the same toll on my body. And it's, quite frankly, at this stage, it's like a meditative process. Like, it's one of those things that I've found a real love for later in life. And so I've got to have a goal. If I'm going to actually be doing something, I need to know where I'm going with it.
It's brilliant. Well, just finally, we have a segment on the Dribble podcast called This or That. Jump to either side of the fence depending on which way you would prefer to lean. And the question this week is, we're seeing such a rise in the standard of both NBL and WNBL. Do you think 40 minutes is still the right time for games, or is it time to move back to 48-minute matches?
time to move back to 48-minute matches. I can never figure why you want to shorten that. It takes away the elements of like fatigue is a big thing, and if you really want to see that, you really want to test an athlete to the limits of their endurance, to make it longer. It adds another element to the competition where you've got to have better aerobic capacity to see the match through. So yeah, I'd like to see it at 48 minutes again.
It should be good fun watching a bit more basketball every single week, that's for sure. Well, look, thank you for joining us. You are a towering figure in Perth Lynx / Breakers history, and it's been great to give people a reminder of both your success and the team's success and the contribution that you've all made to basketball in this state.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate that.